Hey YouTube, how's it going? Got a knife video for you. This one is one that I've been thinking about doing for a while, ever since I got the Yojimbo 2. And today we're going to do a comparison slash philosophy video where I'm going to talk about three knives, the Paramilitary 2, the standard size Manix 2, and the Yojimbo 2. They all have 2 in the name, so that's why we're, no, not really. Yes, they all have 2 in the name, which is kind of cool, but the reason I'm comparing these is because they're actually quite similar if you give it just a little bit of thought. They're very close in price. All of these, you know, are around $120. You see the Manix sometimes for less than that, but you also see it for more than that. Right now, it seems to be landing around that price. I remember a while back, you know, you could pick up Manixes for like $100. I don't think you see them for that anymore. But all of these are around the same price point. I think they have the similar philosophy of use. That is, you know, all of these are primarily EDC blades. However, all of them could function in other roles, maybe combat, maybe bushcraft, maybe some other kind of hard use. You know, if you're a construction worker and want to belt a knife for your tool belt, they could flex into that role. Probably none of these were specifically designed with that in mind. Okay, probably, you know, all of them, I would suggest to you, their heart and soul is everyday carry, regular cutting tasks, but they're all well built enough that they could flex into some other role. Finally, even the blade steel is the same on these. It's all S30V. So there's a lot of similarity. You know, G10 handles with stainless steel liners, S30V steel, very same price, similar philosophy of use. Okay, so that's why I'm comparing all of these, and that's why to me this is going to be a fun video to do. By the way, I'm going to say this, all of these are videos that all of these are knives that I really like. So the other side of this video, the reason it's so much fun for me is because it gives me a chance to talk about some really awesome blades that I love. Okay, so you know, who doesn't like talking about something they really like? So let's start off with our comparison. You know, overall the Para 2 is the largest at 8 1/4 inches. The Yojimbo 2 and the Manix 2 are smaller, each by 1/4 inch. So 7 3/4, 8 inches, 8 1/4. Okay, the blade length on them is a little more similar. This one again is the longest at 3 1/4. That's 3 1/4. This guy is 3 inches right on, and this guy is 3 inches right on. As you can see, even though they're the same blade length, they're very different in terms of blade shape. However, one thing I will say these are very similar in is their edge geometry. The Manix is just a little bit thicker. It is thicker, but not by a whole lot. Both of these are hollow ground, and if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you know I love hollow grinds. I actually kind of wish some of the hard use folders that I have, some of the ZTs and stuff like that, I kind of wish some of those had hollow grinds, because I think it gives better performance while still giving a lot of strength because of the thickness that's available at the spine. But anyway, these two are hollow grind. This one is a full flat grind, although I think probably everyone watching knows that the Manix now comes in a full flat grind. And it did, I'll be honest, take me a little bit of effort to find a Manix with a hollow grind. That's what I specifically wanted, was this Manix rather than the full flat ground Manix. Okay, so that gives you the length on all of these and the cutting edge. So 3 inch cutting edge, 3 1/4 inch cutting edge, 8 1/4 inches, 8 inches, 7 3/4 inches. The blade length on all of these there we go. When we talk about blade length on all of these, 2 of them have the similar, you know, Spydernomics, as some people have called it, where they've got this nice finger choil at the front, the Manix and the Para 2. I really like that. Now the Yojimbo doesn't have that. However, for fine cutting tasks, you can totally, and I have, choked right up and put my index finger on that little space between the handle and the base of the blade there. So you can hold it this way if you're doing really fine cutting tasks, okay? And I have before, and it's comfortable and functional in that position. All right, now another difference between these is weight. This is one interesting thing, and this is why I think people love the Paramilitary 2. The Paramilitary 2, despite being the longest of these knives and despite having the longest blade, is also the lightest at 3 3/4 ounces. 3.75 ounces is excellent, right? The Manix is the heaviest at 4 1/4 ounces, and the Yojimbo is right in the middle at 4 ounces exactly. Okay, now that means for size and weight, these are very comparable. Yes, I think it's an outstanding achievement what Spyderco has done with the Paramilitary 2. There's no wonder this knife is so popular because of the things that I've been telling you. You know, its size to weight ratio is excellent, its construction is excellent, its blade shape is very very versatile, and it will slice very well, okay? The edge geometry is good, the edge angle, the angle on the secondary bevel is good, so it is a good slicer, but it's not as thin as this, okay? This knife, it's like a laser cutting through things, okay? With this knife, although it's very sharp and although it's very nice, you do feel that blade moving through a material. So, that's all the similarity. I think I've given you a pretty good handle on all of the different things that are very similar about these blades. Now let's talk about some of the differences, why you might prefer one over another. Obviously, there's going to be some overlap here because if you really like larger knives, well, the Paramilitary 2 is the largest of these. If you prefer a hollow grind, then at this point, for most people, you're going to have to go with the Yojimbo because of the fact that it's pretty hard to find at any retailer. You can find them on the secondary market, but at a retailer, it's harder to find the hollow ground Manix, okay, or saber ground Manix, however you want it. Both are correct. Again, if you prefer Wharncliffe blade, then obviously you've got to go with the Yojimbo, and the Yojimbo is very utilitarian. Now, let's start getting into some things. Blade comparison. Okay, all of these blades are S30V. Take an edge and hold an edge very well. Can be sharpened relatively easily. Some people, there are guys, and you still see them on the forums and discussion and stuff like that, who say, like, you know, I can sharpen M390, I can sharpen 189 ZDP 189, but I can't sharpen S30V very well. You know. So some people may strongly disagree with what I'm going to say here, but generally speaking, and from most people's experience, certainly in my experience, S30V is not that bad to sharpen. It does take a very good edge, and it will hold that edge very, very well. You know, you're not going to have to sharpen your knife every every second day the way you would with, let's say, HCR 13 MOV. Now, the advantage of a knife like this is because of its cost. If you are, as I gave some examples of like a construction site or something, if you're somewhere where your knife could get broken or destroyed, then you're only out $40 instead of $100 or $120 for most of these. Excuse me, but that's a discussion for a different day. All right, so for these knives, S30V steel, very good steel, and they all have it. The main difference is going to be the blade shape, okay? And in fact, it's going to be different on all of these, okay? Even the Para 2 and the Manix, you're getting considerably more, you know, you're only getting a quarter inch more cutting edge, but you're getting considerably more reach with the Para 2 over the Manix, okay? Because the Manix blade is shorter and its cutting edge is shorter, you end up not having, you know, that length that is given to you by the Para 2. Now, if we talk about the Manix, what it lacks in length, it makes up for in utility, because now you can choke up, and because that blade length is a little shorter, it's very close to your hand and to the pivot point of your wrist, you get a lot of utility and a lot of control in the Manix. Now the Yojimbo is a different animal altogether. Obviously, it's going to cut really well with the tip, and any kind of, if you're opening boxes, if you're opening packages, any task where, any sort of industrial kind of cutting task, let's say you cut, straps all day, every day, man, the Yojimbo is going to work really, really well. Let's say you cut cardboard boxes all day. Again, the Yojimbo is going to be phenomenal. And with that S30V, it's going to hold up pretty well. Now, if you use your knife for more outdoor stuff, maybe you may skin an animal from time to time, you're cutting up fish, those kinds of things, now the belly on your blade becomes a little more critical because you need that ability to sort of make this kind of a cutting, slicing motion. And both of these can do it. However, here's where ergonomics comes into play. The Para 2, because its belly is out here, does it a little better. See, the Manix, although it has almost 100% belly, it's a very, very gentle curve. In some ways, it acts like, when you're cutting with it, a Wharncliffe, because of that sort of downward, I'll hold it this way so you can see sort of that downward slope to the blade. Now let me hold these two side by side. You can see obviously this tip is way down here, but you can see as well that the tip of this knife is not perfectly centered. That would be up here somewhere. It's lower, okay? The domino would be an example of a leaf-shaped blade, only backward, where this is the cutting edge. And so the tip is up higher, making it perform a little more like the Para 2, where this tip is more in line with the center of the blade. So the belly is a little more pronounced at the front to get it up to that point, okay? So, that's the comparison of the blades. All very good blades, all very functional blades. This one is probably the best slicer and maybe the best for utility type tasks. This one is probably a little better for maybe bushcraft. Also does utility very well. One thing all of them have in common, this one is somewhere in between those two, although I would suggest to you that the belly on this is so gentle that it's almost not a belly, okay? Slicing is not going to be a strong suit of this knife unless you rock it back, okay? See how by angling my arm back, I change where that knife hits the surface. If I use it normally, I'm almost chopping, okay? This is what I'd have to do if I wanted to slice. With this, I'm pretty much always chopping, okay? I was going to go like this. Now I can hit, and here's part of the purpose of this design. I can hit and draw and do an awful lot of damage, but I've got to hit first, okay? This knife chops and then slices. And finally, of course, the Para 2 is going to quite naturally, and without rocking your hand way back like this, it's going to quite naturally slice, okay? So you can see how very naturally the Para 2 is a slicing blade, more so than either of the other two. So depends on what your particular use is. I can tell you that probably the most extreme blade shape here is the Wharncliffe on the Yojimbo 2, but I've EDC'd this blade a lot. I love carrying this knife, I really do. I have carried it a whole lot, and there hasn't really been any time where I've thought, boy, I wish I had a knife with some belly on it, okay? I suppose if I was, let's say, cutting up meat for supper, which I rarely do with my folding knife anyway, I might want that belly for, for slicing along a cutting board. A belly is quite handy, all right? So that's how all of those blades compare. The locks, we have two compression locks. Compression lock is a phenomenal locking system. However, it does share something similar with the caged ball lock, okay? In all of these locking mechanisms, both the compression lock that you find on these two and the caged ball lock that you find on this, in order for the lock to fail, a piece of metal has to be crushed. And I don't know if you've ever tried this before, but go and get a piece of metal that's about a little over 1/16 of an inch thick and 3/16 tall, and see what it takes to crush that, okay? It will hold a lot of weight. And metal, if you know anything about, structural steel design or anything like that, you know that steel does very well when, it's only compressed over a short distance, okay? And you guys know this from your experience at home. Let's imagine you were going to build a tree fort, okay? Would you want a really long, skinny piece of wood holding up your tree fort, or would you want a very short, thick piece of wood holding up your tree fort, okay? Obviously, when you have compression forces, you want something short and thick. All of these locks work by compression forces holding the blade open rather than tension. A lock back, okay, a typical lock back works by tension. So when the blade is closed, you're pulling on that long piece of steel. Okay, steel is very strong in compression, but it tends to deflect, it tends to bend a little bit more easily. So now here's where, by the way, this is a total aside, but just please forgive me for 1 second. The reason the triad lock is so freaking amazing is because it takes that tension that would normally be on a back lock and turns it into compression by crushing that little tooth between the stop pin and by crushing that little tooth between the blade tang and the stop pin. Okay, so it makes it an extremely, extremely strong lock. Sorry, dropped my paper. I'm back. So that's how all of these locking mechanisms work. They're all very good locking mechanisms. There's nothing that I would be concerned about on any one of them. I want to say, I could be wrong, but I want to say Spyderco, Cold Steel has tested a compression lock in there. They're doing all those testing videos. By the way, super entertaining. I know a lot of people have really come down on them for doing that and, and kind of calling out other companies and all this. I love it, man. I don't want to destroy all my knives, so it's great to see somebody else destroy knives that they've paid for or gotten somehow. And I can see what happens under extreme stress without having to wreck anything that I own. Okay, so I'm a real big fan of those videos, even though I know some people really, really dislike them. Now, let's come back to these knives we're talking about and do one other comparison, and that is the handle. Now, one thing that I've got to say about Spyderco, in an interview one time I saw Sal Glesser say, we design knives around the edge and the hand, okay? The edge and the hand. And when you feel a Spyderco in hand, you go, yep, they do. I have never really had a Spyderco in hand that wasn't very comfortable, very ergonomic, and gave you a whole lot of ability to cut. Okay, it just hasn't happened for me. Maybe there are some out there, and one of you guys who maybe has 200 Spydercos could share that with us. But in my experience, Sal Glesser was telling the truth. All of the Spydercos I have, even though they look, consider how different. I'm going to see if I can hold on the blades here and not cut myself. Okay, so let's see. We'll do it this way. So just take a look at these handles. They could not look more different, right? They're very, very, very different from one another. However, all of them are exceptionally comfortable. Now, the Para 2 is known for its comfort, and it looks like it would be fairly comfortable. The Manix 2, again, you can see that nice deep choil at the front. You can see how the back sort of tapers down to allow for your pinky and your palm to close around it. So you go, yeah, that makes good sense. I can see why that's comfortable. The one that's probably most surprising is the Yojimbo. When you look at this handle, you're like, how could anyone hold on to that? Like, it does not look like a natural fit for anyone's hand. But it's extremely comfortable, and I've been really surprised. I'm actually a little bit surprised every time I get this knife in my hand because it's very comfortable. Okay, all of these handles are very comfortable. All of them work really well. The one thing that is significant out of all of these is, okay, let's give you the sort of main point about each of these handles. The Para 2 handle is big for the blade, okay? So you get a lot of real estate, you get a very comfortable grip, and you get a lot of room. Plus you get that ability to choke up and do some fine work, which is really, really cool. The Manix, on the other hand, It's very comfortable, but it has these proud liners, which is not something we normally see. And that jimping actually is quite functional. The blade jimping, of course, is as well very functional. It does improve, okay? That the proud liners on skin is only, I mean, it helps, but it's not amazing. When you put gloves on, the proud liners make a bigger difference, okay? Lastly, the Yojimbo. This one, the only jimping it has is right in here, and it's not great, okay? It's there, it kind of grips your finger. You know, if I show you back here, my thumb slides a little easier than it does here, but out of all of these, probably the worst jimping is on the Yojimbo. Having said that, I in no way feel less confident about this blade in hand, okay? I'm not worried about dropping it or it slipping or, you know, me having it fall out and cut me when I'm working with it at all, okay? So that's how those handles compare. I guess one other thing that we should point out is both the Manix and the Para 2 have large lanyard holes. The Yojimbo has no lanyard hole. The other thing that should be pointed out is the deployment hole is the larger, I think 14 millimeter, I could be wrong, it could be 13 millimeter, but let's call it 14 millimeter deployment hole in the Para 2 and the Manix, and the smaller deployment hole in the Yojimbo. A couple people have complained because you can see how that hole is slightly obstructed by the handle, but I don't know. There you go. Like, I don't have any problem with it, and I don't have small fingers. In fact, you know, I kind of have thick sausagey fingers, but it flips just fine for me. So there you go, guys. That's the handle, the blade, the lock, the price. We've pretty much compared every significant feature of all of these knives. I think we can all probably see why the Para is maybe a little more versatile than the other two. However, depending on your preferences, depending on your job, depending on your taste, you may prefer either one of these over the Para. My take on all of these is if you like any one of them, they're great. If you can be fortunate and own all of them, you are very lucky. I consider myself extremely fortunate, extremely blessed to be able to own some of the knives that I do. It's a pleasure to use them and play with them and to make videos about them for you to watch. All right, so there you go, guys. These are three, in my mind, pretty classic, pretty standard fare Spydercos, all with those similar features, the G10, the S30V, the stainless steel liners, all highly loved by lots of people, very popular blades, and I think from watching this, you can probably see just why they're as popular as they are, okay? There you go. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will talk to you soon.